The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Betrayal by the Kufans set this moon on its course, calling out for their guide. Treachery with no remorse, Muslim and his sons. What a tragedy, oh what calamity. The moon bleeds to foresee, the moon bleeds to foresee. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. On the 9th it heard the prayers of those pure souls for the rising sun, for perhaps this could be its role. Akbar's azan so clear, this moon filled with fear. How will it possibly arise and see the state of those dear, and see the state of those dear? The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. It saw the 6-month infant, no water but an arrow. That night it shone its light on Rabab, filled with such sorrow. To see my asghar I crave, I hear nothing but his cries. Oh son, please do not arise, and with this mother sympathize, and with this mother sympathize. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Witnessed it the trampling on Sham-e-Ghariba, saw that night the terror, bodies scattered afar, tents looted and on fire, earrings snatched from Ruqayyah. This moon also in such pains, this household bound in chains, this household bound in chains. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. From this month my baby had to wander veilless, Zahra's grave is restless for her daughter princess, the cloak of purity. For this mother so holy, the beloved of Fatima, paraded in the bazaar, paraded in the bazaar. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Sisters and brothers, welcome to our program here on the fifth night of Muharram. Yeah, losing count. Fifth night of Muharram here, and we'll begin here with the opening with Quran, Brother Kareem. Brothers, welcome to Salawat. Yeah, it's a fifth day of the sixth night, right? Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Messenger reads in what has sent down to him from his Lord, as do the faithful. They all believe in God, his angels, his scriptures, and his message. We make no distinction between any of his messengers. They say, we hear and obey. Grant us your forgiveness, our Lord. To you we all return. God does not burden any soul with more than it can bear. Each gains whatever good it has done and suffers its bad. For do not take us to task if we forget or make mistakes. Lord, do not burden us as you burdened those before. Lord, do not burden us with more than we have strength to bear. Pardon us, forgive us, and have mercy on us. Our protector will help us against the disbelievers.
Thank you very much, Sister Rubina. Now, our request Brother Mansour is here to lead us in the recitation of Marthiya. So, let's go. Yes. So Brother Mansour needs a couple of minutes to get ready, but looks our budding poet might be ready, right? Zara, are you ready for us? Okay, come on, over.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Zafranur Esfahani and I'm 7 years old and I'm going to be reading a different poem from last time. It is by a guy named Hassan. So I'm just going to be reciting it. I hope you like it. A poem for Imam Hussein is what I'm going to read. For I know this is a great deed. My love for you, ya Imam, is so true. I will shout Hussein, heartbroken if only you knew. You are so close to my heart. From it you will never depart. You were born on the 3rd of Shaban. You were a gift from the Rahman. Your father was Al-Haydar, the man who lifted the door of Khaybar. Your mother was Zahra. She loved you so much. Whenever you spoke, her heart was always touched. Without resting day and night, you fought against Yazid to show everyone the right. I saw your heart deepen in deep pain. It left you when you were slain. Thank you to you, Islam is still the true path and same. We are living and we are breathing your name.
Very much. As always, you do beautiful, mashallah. Thank you. Brother Mansour, are you ready for us? Thank you. Please welcome Brother Mansour Salawat.
Read some verses of Marthiya for the dawn. खबर लाए हैं पहले जफा के दोषे جاتے ہیں دشتے میں رہیں سیدھی تلواریں منہ مڑ رہے پروں کو جما کے اڑ رہے ہیں صفانہ سے تم کے رسالے نیاموں سے خنجر نکالے بلند اس طرف رن میں بالے وہ یہاں دل کو زینہ سنبھالے مسلح پہ جنگ فرما رہی ہے کمر دونوں بیٹوں کی بندھوا رہی ہوئے دونوں زیجا آرا بنے خوب دولہا پکارے دعا چپ کے یہ کرتی در سرفراز ہو شہادت سے نثارے شینے ہو کے آئے میرے سامنے سرخ رو ہو کے آئے یہ فرما کے فرمایا سنتے تمہاری دکھاتی ہیں اب دل کو باتیں تمہاری سدھارو منگاؤ سواری نہ ڈر نہ لگے جب کوئی کاری لڑو یوں کہیں سا ستم کرنے والے لڑائی نہیں ہے نئے لڑنے والے मुझे हक़ खिदमत जो देना वो दे लो लड़कपन जानों पे इस वक्त खेलो खुशी से अजल की मुसीबत को झेलो मुझे आज सर में चिकरमो ले लो कहेंगे मुझे लोग रुतबे बड़े हैं इन्हीं के पिसर करबला में लड़े हैं सितारों मोहम्मद आल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Thank you very much, Brother Mansoor. Thank you. Sallu ala Nabi. Sisters and brothers, just a couple of announcements here. On Friday and on Saturday, our program will be slightly lengthened program. After the Salaat al-Maghribain, we have an open session with our speaker, the Q&A. So after Friday, we do the Maghrib prayers. After Maghrib prayers, we have an open session also on Saturday. If we need another additional time, we'll try to work it in. Please kindly agreed to do that. I've received some questions with regards to the program for Ashura. Ashura is on Monday, and our day will start at 11 in the morning with the Amal for Ashura, which will go on 1 o'clock. 1:30 will be time for Dhuhr prayers. At 2 o'clock, we'll start the program for Maqtal for Ashura, which will probably go on until about 4 p.m., I would say, after the program. Ladies' program will be at 5 o'clock. And then the program for Shami al-Ghariba, instead of being at 7:30, will be at 8:45, beginning with Salaat al-Maghrib. And our last program, this series for the first 12 days, will be on Tuesday, which will be the last session with our guest speaker. If we have not finished the Q&A on Friday and Saturday, there will be another chance for us to discussions, inshallah, on Tuesday. This is roughly the program. Once again, my request to you is that we are in need of funds to carry the expenses for this Muharram. I think that the expense will be probably about $10,000-15,000 exactly. I don't know. I'll try to prepare something for later this week, present you a little bit more accurate estimation. We thank for all those people who contributed towards the Muharram fund. If you have not renewed your membership, this is the time to do so. Fiscal year ends end of September, so we'd like to get our books all updated by that time frame. And we thank all those people who are sponsoring the Tabarruk. There will be food distributed on Ashura here in Imam Center after the bayan. This, I request our speaker, Ted Kirmani, to come and address us for tonight. Is he here? Is he in that room? He should be downstairs. Any announcements to make? Try to locate it.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود أحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زين مجالس الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters and youngsters in Islam and Iman here in Seattle, across the globe, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: are science and Islam compatible? We've been discussing the eternal renaissance of the Husseini movement, and in particular, we've been talking about how does the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam give us a rebirth in every era and every time. And within that, we've been discussing what is the future of Islam. That is, what is the future and who will be here, if anyone will be here in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And one of the dynamics that we've been trying to discuss is there are certain themes that are within Islam that we need to focus on. For example, we need to make sure that there is justice, and we are the leaders in terms of justice. We need to make sure, for example, that there is some concept of freedom, and we contribute to that freedom. And we discussed last night within the concept of justice and the future of our communities, one thing that we have to iron out is the family structure. And we have to make sure that there are harmonious relationships within the house, because the house and the family is what builds up society and makes strong, vibrant communities. And we cannot have an environment where people are saying, you know, I'll just go with the relationship as long as it lasts. And if we're happy. If we're not, we move on. We just cohabitate together. We don't need to put labels on the relationship. Why? Because this has an impact on the children. This has an impact on the future generations. And there's many books that have been written on this. We also talked about how we need to be at the forefront of knowledge and wisdom and all of these things. Now, tonight's conversation is something that is really pivotal in terms of the model that we may be needing to use in order to build up our societies and our community. What does that mean? There's a few things that we need to make sure that in our communities, wherever they are, we iron out and we make sure that they are strong and established and vibrant. For example, we need to make sure, number one, the family structure is strong. So we have strong support groups for families to have the best practices implemented in their life, number one. Number two, the four-square model, if you can use it this way. We also need to make sure the madrasa systems are very strong. The Sunday school system, the Saturday school system, the weekend school system. It must be taken seriously, and it should not be treated as a second-class citizen. I've been teaching in madrasa and been an administrator in madrasa for over a decade now. And in that involvement, it's very clear that madrasa, weekend school, Sunday school, everywhere is a second-class citizen. That is, if you don't have any other priority, then you won't come. That's why absenteeism is very high. That's why consistency is a challenge. There's numerous challenges. So if that's not vibrant and that's not robust, then you're going to struggle as well. The third element of the equation is the mimbar itself. What discussion, what dialogue takes place from the mimbar? Does the mimbar actually address what I'm going through on a day-to-day basis? Or is the mimbar discussing something that's going on the other side of the world that may not relate to me at all? Or is the person on the mimbar have any connection and know what my life is like? Do they know what life going to school, elementary school in America is like, or middle school or high school or college is like? What are the challenges that one may face? What are the challenges right now that as we speak that they're changing? Are they aware of that? And does it add value to my life from that perspective? That's the third element. And the top layer is very important, the company that you keep, the company that we keep. Sometimes all of the work, good family structure, good madrasa, good mimbar majalis has gone down the drain because of poor friend selection, poor company, because they may have led them down the wrong path. So the question that comes to us is, how do we build the community of the future? How do we build the Husayniyah, the Imam Bargah, the Islamic center of the future? Right now, unfortunately, and again, from the beginning, I've been saying I invite you to disagree with me, and hopefully we have a robust conversation on the weekend, inshallah. The leadership here has made an initiative to try to have a facilitated dialogue. Inshallah, we will have something like this. And I invite you to give your perspective, but I'm going to say something. In our communities, it seems we have a checkbox culture. What do I mean checkbox culture? Checkbox culture is, I have to check all the boxes. You have to check all the boxes. If we check the boxes, that's success. For example, the program has to start on time, check the box. The program has to end on time, check the box. We have to recite Dua Kumel, check the box. We have to have namaz, check the box. We have to do this, that, and the other. We have to have hadith al-qisa, check the box. We have to have one ayah of the Quran, check the box. I can tell you one thing with certainty, the check the box culture will not get us to the future. Would that work in your businesses? Would that work in your companies? Would that work in Amazon? Would that work in Microsoft? You just check the box. I clocked in, I clocked out. You try to tell your manager that Starbucks or Amazon or Boeing or whatever companies have you. Oh, I was here at 8, I checked out. What did you deliver? I didn't deliver anything. Let's see how long that job lasts. Similarly, in our communities, we have this checkbox culture that, look, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. We have to come together as a collective and figure out what are our KPIs, what are our OKRs, what are our key performance indicators, what are our objectives and key results. Don't you do that in your professional lives? Why don't we do that here? Oh, because nobody has time. Fair enough. Here's the question. This is what I was highlighting in the previous night. That is, we need to figure out how do we align what it is that people want in their lives with the mosque. So the mosques, the masjid, the Husayniyah, the Imam Bargah is not seen as something that takes away from what else I'm trying to accomplish in life, whatever else I'm trying to achieve in life. And that's critical for us to understand. The people who established and built many of our communities coast to coast in America and Canada and the United Kingdom, they came from another part of the world. And when they came from another part of the world, they came with that cultural religious baggage. That is, they already had a system where they were taught that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allah. The Qur'an is the Qur'an. I'll give you a very, very, very simple example. You ask many elders in our community, and if they give a dalil, give me some proof, give me some evidence. They'll bring the Qur'an. And they'll say the Qur'an says this is ayah, therefore you have to do it. Hold on a second. In your mind, the Qur'an is the absolute word of God. In that child's mind, the Qur'an is not the absolute word of God. You need to prove that first. And until and unless you prove that, that dalil will not hold any weight. For example, if I come to you and I say to you, the Bible says this, will you accept it? If you know the history of Christianity and how many times the Bible has changed, Wouldn't accept it. So why do you expect a young person to accept what the Qur'an says on face value? Why would they? So you have to start from scratch. So when you say the Qur'an says to read namaz, the Qur'an says aqimus salah, the Qur'an says atimus siyam, or the Qur'an says all of these things, well, the Qur'an, you need to first make sure that they believe in the Qur'an being the word of God and what's the proof and evidence. And they have some really good answers. If you talk to young people, they'll say, if this is the word of God and it's supposed to be my leader, my guide in life, this is what they say. Why is it disorganized? Why isn't it clear? Why can't I get it? If this is God's book to me, I should be able to read it and get it very easily. These are the things that they say. What I'm trying to say is, we need to think about these things and have an honest conversation about how it is that we can address these things, because we are losing people very rapidly. If you're working at Amazon and Microsoft and Boeing and Starbucks and these top tier Fortune 500 companies, you are taught critical thinking. We're told to incorporate critical thinking. That's our whole world. But in our communities, we have something different. Therefore, in the brief moments that we have together, I want to lay the foundation of what is the relationship between science and Islam. This is our conversation for tonight. Number one, what is it? What is the dynamic of what we're seeing right now on the ground reality of our community, with the relationship between knowledge and Islam, but in particular science and Islam, number one. Number two, with respect to this, what happened in other religions, such as Christianity, in terms of trying to foster intellectual dialogue and research, and what were the blockades and how did they try to solve the blockades? Number three, what was the view of the Ahlul Bayt in trying to disseminate and make sure there is accurate, true knowledge in our communities and to try to prevent any kind of corruption? The next level is, how do we build the mosque of the future in the terms of the intellectual dialogue? What needs to be there in order for us to have a robust conversation that we actually have true belief in Islam and the Qur'an and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, and we don't take it half-heartedly, God forbid. And finally, we'll come to a discussion and conversation about what is our contribution as American Muslims, as American Shias, to our broader community, and how can we help them, and not only ourselves. And in that, we will connect it to the message finally of Karbala and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the plains of Karbala in terms of what is true knowledge and what is true ilm as per Islam. This is our agenda for tonight. Wherever you are, here in Seattle or across the globe, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At the first level, last year I was in Los Angeles for Muharram. And in Los Angeles, beyond Hollywood, you have many other things as well. In Los Angeles, for example, in the greater LA region, you have, for example, many institutions. For example, you have Caltech, California Institute of Technology. And there you also, for example, have NASA. NASA has a lab over there that has a collaboration with Caltech. There's UCLA as well, which is the best public university in America. Why am I saying this to you? In Los Angeles or in Burbank, there's something called NASA's JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab. And there were people who worked at the Jet Propulsion Lab who were coming to the majalis, like people who worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Let me make this clearer for you. Remember a couple of nights ago, I said, what's another word for liberty? I said freedom. Let me make this a little clearer for you. Jet Propulsion Lab, what does it mean? NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Another term for jet propulsion is rocket science. Have you heard of rocket science? It's not rocket science. Rocket science is considered one of the most difficult things in terms of subjects. Why am I saying this to you? If you are a rocket scientist in the day, in the morning, and you are doing rocket science in the day, and you come to the majalis at night, you don't shut off that part of your brain that's a rocket scientist in the day. It's not like a switch that you turn on and off. So that critical thinking that that person has in the daytime, they're bringing that same mind to the majlis, as they should. But here's the problem, here's the challenge, here's the dynamic that we're facing. Everything outside of our walls is critical thinking, analysis, and everything inside our walls is conformity. Get with the program or get out. So this leaves the young mind confused. What do? My bills are paid by being a critical thinker, by questioning the status quo. And when I come here, it's the complete opposite. Just accept it. Just believe it. The Qur'an says it. Well, hold on a second. You need to explain the Qur'an to me first. This is the dilemma. This is why we're losing people, because we have not been honest about the ground reality. And until and unless we are honest about the ground reality, we will lose more and more people. You cannot tell someone to be a, by the way, this is happening, it's been happening for years with me. Everywhere I go, every city I go, someone comes to me, honest, sincere, loving parents. They come to me. They say, Sayyid, can you please talk to my son? Can you please talk to him and tell him to come to the Imam Barga? I said, what happened? He used to come to the Imam Barga, but then he went to 4 years undergrad, then he went to 4 years med school, then he went to at least 3 years residency. And now I tell him, come to the Imam Barga, come to the masjid. And he tells me these are all fairy tales. I don't have time for this nonsense. It's happening everywhere. Because for 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school, and 3 years residency, you said, don't worry about it, you can come to the mosque later. And what happened as time progressed, 1 year became 2, became 11, and eventually they said, Baba, these are your fairy tales, these are not my fairy tales. I'm not saying this is what I believe, I'm telling you what they say. So how do we make sure that people are here in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Well, we need to be very intellectually honest. And we need to say maybe things that we don't know. We said we don't have the answers right now. We should not try to force and say that this is what modern science says and this is what the Quran says. By the way, I don't know if you know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, there were scientific tafasirs of the Quran written. And people said this is what modern science says at the time. And so the Quran says. What was the problem with that? Fast forward 100 years, all of the science has changed. And so then you lose the underlying spirituality. The Quran is not a book of science. It's not a book of history. The Quran is ultimately a book of guidance. It may give some scientific insight. It may give some historical insight. It may give some of that. But it gives you a prereq. You need to first, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It says, hold on a second, there's a prereq. It's not for everybody. So, and الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Our world, we don't believe in ghaib. Our world, outside of these walls, there's no concept. Like, you're going to tell me to believe in something I haven't seen and I don't have evidence for? So these are the challenges where we have to be very brutally, intellectually honest. And once we do that, maybe we'll all be on a better trajectory. Number one. Number two, the next question we need to look at is, what's the real incentive for people to come today? The real incentive for people to come today is this. How do you improve their quality of life? That's the essence. They're not interested, although the food here in Seattle is phenomenal. You have some amazing chefs and people who can cook phenomenally. That's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Meaning, the people have other options. They can go eat somewhere else. They can go find a nice place where they want to eat. That's not the incentive. What the incentive is that how does this add value to my life? I was at Microsoft's campus, Microsoft headquarters, right? Microsoft somewhat built this city, right? Jeff Bezos moved Amazon here because of Microsoft. He said this very openly. So Microsoft built the city. And so I went to the campus here, and the campus has all these cafeterias, and the campus has, for example, all of these barber shops, and the campus has all the bells and whistles. It has secret rooms. It has everything that you could want. Why? Because they love you out of the kindness of their heart. You're their son, you're their child. No, it's cutthroat business because they know that if they don't have that, Amazon down the street has it. If they don't have it, then Google will have it. If Google doesn't have it, then Meta will have it. If Meta won't have it, then Apple will have it. And they're poaching one another's talent, not out of the kindness of their heart. So they compensate really well. They make sure that you have well-paying base salary. They make sure that you have good stock options so you don't jump ship. They make sure that you have all the perks that you want, healthcare, you name it. What about our communities? This is where the conversation gets a little bit sober. One thing that I've asked, last 2020, I had the opportunity to go to India. And I went to India for some charitable work, and I went to 5 cities in India. I went to Mumbai, big city. I went to Lucknow. I went to Bhavnagar in Gujarat. I went to Hyderabad. I went to Bangalore. I went to 5 major cities in India. I've been to Pakistan also numerous times, but I was a bit younger. This was more recent. And what was interesting about that is, if you look at the history of the Indian subcontinent, in particular India used to produce some amazing Shia scholars. Used to. What do I mean? You'll find in the cemeteries in Najaf, every second or third scholar who lived 100 or 200 years ago, their last name had Hindi on it in some way. In fact, again, I'm taking the name. I'm not taking it for political reasons. Please don't take it that way. But Sayyid Khomeini. In fact, one of the statements that I was told by members of the Iranian community was that the Shah would not speak to him because he said he's an Indian. He's not even an Iranian. I'm not going to talk to a non-Irani about Iranian policy. And what was he referring to? He was referring to the grandfather of Sayyid Khomeini, whose name was Hindi. Musawi al-Hindi, his gravestone from Kashmir says that. By the way, if he was originally Iranian, that's another conversation. But what I'm saying is, why did that stop? And everywhere I went in India, people said the same thing. The Pakistani community says the same thing, that the subcontinent used to produce great scholars, but they don't anymore. Why? Because they tell me, not me, their words, we did not, in the last 100 years, we did not send our best minds to Hausa. We sent the person who couldn't be a doctor, who couldn't be an engineer, who couldn't do anything else. We said, go there. And now, what's that saying? You reap what you sow. And now we are dealing with the repercussions of that. If you want the top talent, Microsoft wants the top talent, Amazon wants the top talent, Google wants the top talent, Meta wants the top talent, Apple wants the top talent. So they have to make sure that they put incentives in place to keep, not only get top talent, keep top talent. The people in our members are very sincere, are very honest. They're very good people, don't get me wrong. What's that old saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Heard of this? Good intentions are often not sufficient. It's important to have good intentions, don't get me wrong. But you can have good intentions and lead someone down the wrong path, especially if you're not being sober and honest about what is needed here. Second point. Third point. The first universities that were built in the West were actually started as churches and seminaries. Oxford is almost 800 years ago in the 12th century. Oxford emerges in the United Kingdom. It starts as a seminary. Similarly, Cambridge starts as a seminary. When it starts as a seminary, the same with Oxford, Harvard in Boston. Harvard starts as a seminary. But eventually, these seminaries or these religious schools branched off into the secular space, or what they were saying was philosophy and science and chemistry and biology and physics. Now here, please pay close attention to what I'm about to say. The church then told the researchers, the scientists, the Copernicus and the Galileos of the world, we want you to do research. We want you to do tahqiq. We want you to do research. These scientists were not naive. Just like many of you are scientists and engineers and doctors, they were smart at that time too. But hold on a second. You want me to do research as a physicist, as a chemist, as a biologist? You want me to do research? They said, yes, we want you to do research. Okay, number one, let me get this straight as a scientist. You want me to do research? Yes, we want you to do research. Number two, you control my job, as in I'm employed under the church? Yep, okay. Number three, you write my check? You also control, you have government power? Fifth question, have you lost your mind? You want me to do research? Why? Because the scientists knew that at that time, the church believed in a geocentric model of the universe. That is, the earth is at the center of the universe. And their research was saying that we know the earth is not at the center of the universe. We know the sun, it's a heliocentric model. We know that the sun is at the center of the universe. But if we say that in our research, you will, what eventually became, you will do the Inquisition on us. The Inquisition is a very dark period in European history where they killed scientists and engineers and many people who had views that deviated from what the church was saying. So the church was saying the earth is the center. And the researchers were saying, no, buddy. We know the sun is the center, but we're not going to say it because you have the power and you control the paychecks and you can kill us. And they killed many people. So what was the resolution? What was the solution? The solution that emerged was something called the tenure system. Tenure. T-E-N-U-R-E. Those who are in academia, they know. There's something called tenure and there's something called tenure track. That is someone who's on the track to be tenured. What is tenure? Once you hit tenure in academia and universities, you cannot be fired for your research unless there's some gross violation of some type of thing. It has to be it's very difficult to fire someone with tenure. There has to be some other grounds. Why was that implemented? That was implemented so that intellectual honesty could be preserved. So the scientists can tell you what is the ground reality without worrying about the repercussions and the consequences. Third point, I'm giving you data points, and you guys are, I'm sure, much smarter than I am. You should be able to connect these data points. Remember, this is not a children's majlis. Many times people think English is a children's majlis. This is an academic lecture. This is the University of Imam Hussain Islam. And I'm expecting that the university students here or the young professionals will explain what I'm saying to their parents, because they may not be understanding what I'm saying. And I'm hoping that you explain this to the younger ones. But I want to make it clear this is not a children's majlis, because this is the future of our community we're talking about. So when you say that your children don't get this, I'm sorry, I'm not here for them in particular. I'm here for young professionals, young college students, the future of our community, who will be the leaders of our community, who will try to explain to you where the world has shifted, because you may not understand where the world has shifted. And they'll hopefully explain it and lay the groundwork for the children of the future. So this is the third data point. Fourth data point. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, in his letter to Malik al-Ashtar, he writes a letter to Malik. He says, Malik, you're going to be my governor in Egypt. Egypt, mind you, at that time was not predominantly Muslim. Egypt at that time was predominantly Christian. Now, Malik didn't get to Egypt, but the letter still remains. And in that letter, and I invite you to read that letter, he says in one moment, Malik al-Ashtar, Imam Ali says to Malik that, oh Malik, make sure that the judges are compensated well, are paid well. Imam Ali, you are saying to compensate judges well? Why? Aren't you the same one who said that this khilafah, this governorship, this rulership is worth less to me than the shoe that I patch up, number one? Or wasn't he the same one who said this khilafah is worth less to me than the sneeze of a goat or the sneeze of a camel? It has no value. Imam Ali, you are the last person to be materialistic. Why are you saying that you need to compensate judges well? Why? Because Imam Ali was a triple, quadruple PhD in economics. He understood incentives. He understood incentive structure. That is, if the judge is struggling in terms of paying the bills, they will be susceptible to bribery. And when they are susceptible to bribery, that leads to corruption in the land. And when there is corruption in the land, you can never have justice in the land. That was Imam Ali 1400 years ago. What's the challenge we're facing today? In our pulpits, in our mimbars, in our majalis, we, not them, not the Maulanas, we as communities have created a conflict of interest. And this conflict of interest perpetuates, and the losers in this situation are us as a community. What is that? The conflict of interest that we have created is that we have created an environment where the main form of livelihood for the people who are on the mimbar is the mimbar majalis. They have Muharram Safar time and Shahr Ramadan time and maybe a little bit in Rajab in order to earn their income for the whole year. There's a few people who have a resident alim position, but there's not enough to go around. Number one. So now, this is the first point. Main form of income is that. We're having a meta conversation, right? And this is important to get this ironed out. And until we don't get this ironed out, we will not get Islam. That's why I'm saying right now, you are not getting Islam in the truest sense from the mimbar. And it will not happen until we don't figure out these incentive schemes. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, the companies that you work for and some of the companies that you run. You spend a lot of time to figure out incentive structures to make sure you keep top talent. So now stay with me here. So Imam Ali said to Malik, make sure they're compensated well because they are the ones who they influence society and they run society. And if they're susceptible to bribery, then the whole society goes down. So now come here. We have made their main form of income for our scholars, the majalis of Muharram and Safar and Ramadan. Now, if I'm a speaker and I come to your community as a guest speaker, what is my goal? What do I want? Do I want you to be upset at me? Do I want you to be happy with me? Do I want you to be engaged with me? Or do I want to tell you things as they are, regardless of whether I come back or not? Or if this is my main form of livelihood, at some point in time, do I want to tell you that what you want to hear? Because if I tell you what you want to hear, then eventually you'll invite me back. And when you invite me back, that increases my popularity. And when that increases my popularity, eventually I become renowned and world famous. Do you know that I can tell you right now, I know the formula in 13 years of lecturing. I know the formula of how to become a world famous speaker. I can tell it to you right now. You want to know? Just get Shias and Sunnis to fight. That's it. You want to start a rift? You want to be the most popular speaker in the world? Say Shias are absolutely right and everybody else is going to hell. And just keep repeating that on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. Become the most famous speaker in the world. Because people love that. It's tribalism. We love to beat our chest and say we're right, the other person's wrong. It's human nature. It's been going on for thousands of years. The problem with that is we suffer and we lose out. There's always going to be, by the way, the Maulanas are not the culprits. The culprits are the communities and the management. By the way, there's a whole huge, like you may have some grievances with speakers, by the way. I'm sure doesn't happen in Seattle, but you may say this Maulana is like all over the place. But believe me, Maulanas have huge grievances with the communities. You have to look at all stakeholders from all sides. Don't you do that in work? You look at the stakeholders. You look at the customer. You look at the employees. You look at everyone's perspective. And what I'm just saying, like these communities, they don't do anything. Just lethargic. Well, why are they lethargic? We need to explore that. Well, what perceived value is there for them? That's where I'm saying the perceived value today is improving people's quality of life. Meaning, are they getting more joy in their life from attending in the Mambarga? Are they reducing their stress? Is their marital relationship better? Is their family relationship better? Are they getting into the top institutions? Are they getting into the top jobs? Are they having a better quality of life by being a participant in the mosque or not? And you'll say, oftentimes, we don't have these KPIs, we don't have these OKRs, we don't have these metrics, we're not measuring these things. So people are saying that, if I have time, then I'll come. I remember I was in one city, I won't mention the name. I was talking about this, and the brother afterwards, he happened to be a psychiatrist. He said that I want to share something with you afterwards. So he said, you know what? You know how true what you just said was? I said, how true? He said, there was someone from our community. My wife was asking them. She was also a physician, happened to be a physician. That why don't you come to the mosque this weekend? And she thought about it for a second. She said, oh yeah, there's no party, there's no function, there's nothing else going on. I'm free this weekend. I can come to the mosque. And that's the reality of the matter. If I don't have anything else going on, and there's nothing good on TV, then I can come to the mosque. That's where in the list of priorities, the mosque, the Masjid Imam Barga lands in. So what happens with the mimbar? The mimbar dynamics are such that until we fix that system, there's no tenure system for Maulanas. By the way, most Maulanas that I know, they don't even have health care. Forget about tenure system. Poor guys are living less than paycheck to paycheck. The communities, they milk them badly. And then you wonder why people don't become Maulanas. I'll give you an example. If your child, you spent your whole life, you want your child to be, like a doctor, engineer, you want them to go to a top institution, they become 18 and they come to you, Baba, Mama, I figured out what I want to do with my life. I figured out. You're like, yes, I've been waiting for this day. What are you a doctor? You want to Harvard, Princeton, Yale? What are you going to do? Baba, I want to be a Maulana. What are you going to say, mashallah or la hawla wa la quwwata? We lost it? You lost your marbles? That's for somebody else. That's not for you. In fact, what's the proof in the pudding? The proof of this is that Maulanas don't make their own kids Maulanas. Why? Because they know it's a tough life. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants that. Every time I go somewhere, every community, people say, have you lost your marbles? You have a PhD in engineering. Why are you doing this? Why are you wasting your life away? You're in the prime of your career. You're 32 years old. You should be in Google. You should be in Facebook. You should be in Apple. What are you doing? You have a family. Here's the problem. If somebody doesn't stand up, nobody stands up. Everyone thinks that it's somebody else's problem. And this is the reality. Have you ever heard of the bystander effect? The bystander effect is well documented in psychology. And that is, if there are two people who are arguing or two people are fighting or there's some commotion between two individuals, as one person passes by and stops, and a second person passes by and stops and sees this fight between these two people, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, as the crowd that is observing and watching gets bigger, does the probability of someone acting increase or decrease? It decreases. The more people that are watching the scene, the less likely one individual is to act and to stop it. That's exactly what was happening in Karbala, by the way. 72 on one side, 100,000, 70,000, whatever the number was, at least 30, 40,000 on the other. If Karbala, by the way, happened today, the poet says, if Karbala happened today, there would be 72 on it, if that. So 8 billion people? So if I don't step up, and by the way, I haven't done anything. There's people who've done 100 times more than I have. But somebody has to step up and say that, look, where are we going? Is this the most important thing in our life or not? The words say one thing, the actions say something totally different. And by the way, I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to our whole community everywhere. I'm saying this to myself as someone in the ship, in the boat with you. You can't tell fairy tales and expect them to. You have to have some realistic propositions in terms of what's going to happen. So now, solution possibly. What does the mosque of the future look like? What does the Husseiniya of the future look like? Well, one solution I gave last night, that we need to have an environment where you have, rather than a monologue, you have a dialogue, a back and forth, some conversation, number one. And number two, you have a panel discussion where you use the talent that you already have in your community. Many of our communities have scientists and engineers and professors already in the community. Utilize that talent. We need to become a community of learners. Why? The concept of tonight. Science in Islam, knowledge in Islam. What was the first verse of Revelation? Iqra. Read. Read in the name of your Lord. There was a publication in Iraq. It was called Al-Ilm. It was a magazine. And in this magazine, Al-Ilm, there was some calligraphy on the front. The calligraphy that was on the front of this magazine, it was on the editor's wall behind him. When it was on the editor's wall behind him, at that point in time, there was a German Orientalist and a professor who had come from Germany to Iraq. And he said, could you please explain this calligraphy that's on the wall behind you? I said, yeah, this is the cover of our magazine, Al-Ilm. He said, oh, could you explain it? Like, what's the artwork represent? He said, yeah, it's calligraphy. It's written in Arabic in a certain script. And it says certain prophetic traditions from the Holy Prophet. So, what does it say? He said, well, in one corner it says here, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. To obtain knowledge is a requirement for every Muslim and Muslimah, every male and female. To obtain knowledge is a requirement. It's a mandate, like namaz, like roza, like hajj, like zakat and all that. So requirements. What else does it say? The other corner says, أُطْلُبُ الْعِلْمِ مِنَ الْمَهْدِ إِلَى اللَّحْدِ. Obtain knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Oh, cradle to the grave at every moment? So yeah, that's what the tradition is. So what else does it say? Another one in the corner says, أُطْلُبُ الْعِلْمِ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِالصِّينِ. Obtain knowledge even if you have to go to China. Now, some scholars, there's a different opinion on that, but I mentioned to you last night, in the Islamic literature, you will find Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, they say Umar ibn Sa'ad's father was sent to go to China. Many people say he wasn't the one, but some delegation was sent to China, to Canton, which the Cantonese region, by Rasulullah. Anyways, obtain knowledge even if you have to go to China. I said, really? It says that? It says from cradle to grave, even if you have to go to China, and it's a mandate on everyone. Interesting. So what does the last one say in the corner over there? So the last one says that ilm, knowledge, is the lost property of a believer. They should get it from wherever they can. Wow. So what does it say in the center? He said in the center is the first verse and the first word of Revelation. Iqra, read. The German Orientalist said, I'm shocked and I'm baffled. I didn't know Islam has such a rich tradition of knowledge and wisdom. That is, I'm looking at these traditions and it says from cradle to grave, you need to be obtaining knowledge. That is at every moment. So it's not time bound. Number two, even if you have to go to China, that means it's not space bound. So it's not limited by zaman and makan. It's not limited by time and space. Okay. Then the next level of the equation, the next element of the equation comes forward. So what is it based on? So then it's not even based on your gender, male, female, both are required? Yeah. Wow, everyone has to do this. And on top of that, doesn't matter who the teacher is, it's the lost property. It could be a non-Muslim, doesn't matter. And the first verse, so I'm astonished why the Muslim world is not leading the world in science and arts and all the other subjects of the world. Now, we're going to come to this in a moment because there's a long history that we're neglecting here that we're not talking about. But there's also a catch with that, not caveat with that. What am I saying? What am I trying to say with you? To you. At this point in time, what I'm trying to draw your attention to is, with respect to the history of Islam, there was a moment in time where Islam was at the forefront of intellectualism, of science, of technology, but somehow along the way, we lost our way in the Muslim world. I'll give you an example. The Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize is, you don't need any introduction on the Nobel Prize, in the various fields in medicine and physics and economics, you name it. These are the prizes that are given to professors, academics, people who have dedicated their life to these fields and found things, they get the Nobel Prize. To break down demographically, what percentage of Nobel laureates are from what faith? It's very interesting. What percentage are Muslims? And you find that Muslims are 2 billion in the world, for example, but what percentage of them represent Nobel Prize winners? And on the flip side, the Jewish community, how many Jewish members are there in the world, and how many Jewish Nobel laureates are there? Now stay with me here. I'm giving you some numbers, but I'm sure that you can probably visualize this in your head much better than I can. On one side, you have the Jewish population in the world is approximately 30 million or less, million in the whole world. It's not a huge number. 0.0002%, like very small number. 30 million in the whole world. Because remember, in true sense, you can't convert to Judaism, right? Because your mother has to be Jewish. There are some ways that they've now brought out, but you're still not fully Jewish until that's the case. You're God's chosen people. So there's a very select few. But despite that, they represent over 23% of all Nobel laureates. Now, on one side, they're this much of the whole world, and they're this much of the Nobel laureates, about almost a quarter. Hats off to them. We should give credit where credit is due. Fair enough. And it's not here to criticize anyone. Now come to the Muslim world. In the Muslim world, when this issue comes up, in terms of the gross dynamics, let's just come to science. In science, there's just a few. There's someone from Turkey who's a Muslim who has won it in sciences, for example, in physics and chemistry. Someone from Egypt who's won it in chemistry. And there's, for example, Professor Abdul Salam, who has won it from Pakistan, who's a physicist. By the way, what's interesting about Professor Abdul Salam is Professor Abdul Salam in every other domain in life, he's not a Muslim. But when we need a Muslim Nobel laureate, we're like, okay, well, Abdul Salam's a Muslim now. We have such an identity crisis in terms of where we're going. You don't think young people see through this as clear as day? They see this through this like as clear as the sun. And when that happens, they say, hold on, this is not what I need. In our actions, most of us don't believe in Islam predominantly. This is what no one wants to say. We believe in science predominantly. We believe in modernism predominantly. And I'm not saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is we just need to be honest and not have double standards in our community and tell people one thing and tell them another. I have to deal with people who come to me, say that I'm getting married, I want to get married, can you help me out? So the whole year, the whole life, we tell the young person, work hard, study hard, be a good Muslim, read namaz on time, fast on time. The person goes to college, they get maybe an engineering degree, they get a job, maybe they're making 70, 80K. They do everything right, and they get in line to get married. And that guy who's never been to the mosque, never done anything right, he's a millionaire, he gets married right away. What's going on here? We're sending mixed signals. And when we send mixed signals, people get confused in the beginning. But when they realize and the reality sets in, they say, I know the truth. Let me give you an example. There's a philosopher by the name of Montesquieu, French philosopher. He said a man has 3 educators in his life. Never forget this. He says the first educator, the first teacher of a man's life. He said this 300 years ago. Montesquieu said your first teacher is your parents. Your father, your mother, your parents are your first teacher. Your second teacher is your schoolmaster, the teacher at the school. Your third teacher is the world. And what the world teaches you contradicts what the first two taught you. What the world teaches you contradicts what your parents taught you and contradicts what the school taught you. Why? Because your parents and the school told you things as they should be. And the world tells you things as they are. Is that not what Bill Gates said in the commencement speech? He said that the world is not fair. The world's not always just, although you would want it to be. The world's not just, the world's not fair, the world's not always nice, the world's not always kind, the world's not always all these things. Does that mean that we don't teach our children to be nice and kind? No. We definitely teach our kids, be nice, be kind, be generous, be all of those things. But at the same time, don't be naive. Because not everyone on the other side is going to be fair, nice, and honest, and X, Y, and Z. Similarly, I can sit here and say everything is all fine and dandy. As the poet says, Dil ke khush rakhne ko ghalib ye khayal acha hai, ya dil ke behlane ko ghalib ye khayal acha hai. That, like, I can just keep saying that things are all fine and things are all dandy. That doesn't solve the ground reality. Problem persists. People come to me and they say that, Maulana, my son's marrying a non-Muslim. By the way, I have no problem with that in the sense that non-Muslims are amazing people. They're great humans. But the problem that the parent is saying to me is that religion was not a criteria, not a primary driving force in that person's life, right? There's a few things that you need to iron out before you get married. This is what secular scholars say. Religion, finances, and children. You want to have these things or not? And so if you marry someone outside of your religion, fine and well to you. I'm not here to judge you. Who am I to judge you? But what I'm saying here is, why are the parents having a problem with this? They're having a problem with this because they were sending a mixed signal the whole time. You say, okay, for example, when I ask people, and I'm going to be honest here, and I invite you to disagree with me. Let's say, Sid, I want my child to get married. Oh, fantastic, that's really great. What are you looking for? Okay, I want them to be educated. So education is good. I want them to, have a good job, good career. I said, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. What else do you want? Oh, they should be attractive. Very good. They should be light skinned. These are two different things, by the way, right? It's not fair skin. It's not. And then I'm wondering, where does Islam come on the list? Is Islam going to come anywhere on the list? And now you may say it's implied. Maulana, they're talking to you, it's implied. The reality of the matter is, you told your kids, marry someone who's educated, marry someone who's well off, marry someone who's attractive, marry someone who's light skinned, and they go to the hospital and they start working in the hospital. In the hospital, Jesse and Jenny, and they meet up much more than Ali and Fatima. And that's the reality. We're not being honest, and we haven't been honest for a long time. And until and unless we are brutally honest internally with ourselves, we're not going to shift the dynamics of the equation. And that's why young people are leaving. They're saying that I can find more Islam in the church. I can find more Islam in the synagogue. I can find more Islam in the temple, in the Buddhist temple, in the Hindu temple, in the XYZ temple. Because what is the reality is, we are oftentimes cultural centers with a varnish of Islam on the outside. It just says Imam Ali Center, Husseini Center, Jafari Center, Zaidi Center. It's like just plastering something on the wall and saying that this is Islamic. What's that saying? Lipstick on a pig. That's the reality of the matter. That's why we're losing people. That's why and until and unless we're honest and sober about these conversations, we won't be able to get to the reality. The next phase, and I'm drawing to a conclusion, is I mentioned something last night that I need to bring to your attention again tonight. Why is it that our young generation should be at the forefront of knowledge, at the forefront of intellectualism? And one of the elements of that equation is that we need to figure this out. I'll just use this as an example right now. So right now, what's really great about here is, and again, every moment is Islam. Islam is here right now. So timeliness is very important here, and it's very important in Islam. But this goes back to our issue of KPIs and OKRs. What are our KPIs and OKRs? Checking the box. But has anyone come forward? And by the way, there's like one or two people running everything here, and there's one or two people running every mosque everywhere else. This is the challenge. Nobody has skin in the game. No one has a sense of this belongs and this is a part of me. We need to inculcate that. But what about transformation? Can transformation be a KPI? That regardless, even if the lecture was 5 minutes, did it transform? Did it not transform? What if the lecture is 2-3 minutes over? Are people going to say the lecture was too long, or did it transform or not transform? We need to figure out what are our metrics. So tonight, inshallah, hopefully I'll conclude sooner than normal. I have no interest in dragging on your time. Believe me, if I don't want to be lecturing. I've had it with lecturing. I hate hearing my own voice. It's been 13 years. I'm sick of it. But the reality of the matter is I don't see anyone else doing this. I don't see anyone else discussing this. And the problem is, if you read the history of Shi'ism, when your parents, your grandparents, and my grandparents, they fled persecution to the point that they would have to flee from the Arab belt. They would have to flee from the Persian belt. They would have to flee from the subcontinent in a state where they used to butcher the Shias. Read the history of Baghdad. Do you know how the walls of Baghdad were built? Mansur, Mesopotamia was an ancient society. Mansur al-Dawaniqi is the one who built modern Baghdad. You know, in the old times, they used to build a wall around the city. Do you know how Sadat and Sayyids ended up in, for example, the subcontinent? How did they end up in Central Asia, in the Caucasus? How did they end up in the middle of nowhere? Because during that time, when they were building the walls of Baghdad, Mansur said, look, I want you to build the walls of Baghdad. So what are you going to use? We're going to use cement and water. He said, okay, cement powder is fine. I don't want water though. So what do you want? He said, I want you to use the blood of the Sayyid Hassani to build the wall. So they would drain the blood of the Sayyid Hassani in the cement, and they would line the walls. They would living people, they would close them between the walls, and they would die. There was a fragrance that used to come from the Sadat up until the time of the 7th Imam. And the 7th Imam prayed for it to be removed because the persecution had gotten to such a level. I'm talking to you if your last name is Zaidi or Jafri or Rizvi or Taqavi or whatever it may be. And if we just come and say that Islam has no bearing on my life, it's like spilling milk over everything that they gave their life for. You know how they fled? They fled in environments where they had to leave overnight. When they left, what did they take with them? Did they take their money, their property? They took their books in one hand and they took their aqidah and their heart and they fled. And that's what I'm noticing, that we're at risk of losing. That's why I'm here. And so I mentioned last night, MAO alpha is a gene variant, and this has to do with the future of law in our country. You know, there's a law, there's DNA that is used in law, that if someone committed a crime, there's a lag. But the future will be that when someone commits a violent crime, such as shooting up a school or shooting up a institution or a cinema, what will happen is the judge will come forward and says, okay, this person committed this violent act, now let's do this. Let's do a gene test on the person. Run a gene test and see, did this person carry MAO alpha, for example, number one. If they did, check the box, number one. Number two, then they would invite a psychiatrist or a psychologist to do some questioning and then see, did this person experience childhood trauma as a child? This would lead to gene expression. And if both boxes checked and other boxes checked, they would come forward and say, that has an impact on how long this person will be in prison. And that's the reality of the matter. This is where the world is coming. If our youth are the most intellectuals, they should also be contributing to our greater society to bring justice to society. Not just for you and I, for everyone. That's what Islam is about. That's why Imam Hussein rose. The narrations say on the plains of Karbala, two brothers were there on the 10th of Muharram. One was named Aoun and one was named Muhammad. These were the sons of Sayyidah Zainab. And the narrations say that Sayyidah Zainab was looking at them as if, why have you not gone to the battlefield yet? At that point in time, they said, our mother, we ask our uncle, but he keeps saying that you are the trust, the amana of my sister. I can't let you go. Eventually, Bibi Zainab, Sayyidah Zainab, she takes the two children, she takes them to the tent and she says, my brother, you need to let these two children go to the battlefield. My two sons, they are there to sacrifice upon me. Imam Hussein eventually, reluctantly, he eventually accepts. He helps the two boys onto their horse. They go towards the battlefield. When they go towards the battlefield, they fight very courageously. When they fight very courageously, eventually they begin to ask, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad begins to cry out and call out, hold on a second, who are these youth? Who are these people that are fighting the enemy or are fighting us so valiantly and so bravely that we are not able to stop them? He said, they are the grandsons of Ali al-Murtaza. They are the grandsons of Ja'far al-Tayyar. They are the sons of Zainab. He said, you will not be able to defeat them one-on-one. You need to surround them and ambush them. They surrounded the two brothers. They ambushed them. At that point in time, they struck one. He fell towards the ground. He said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He called on to his uncle. Imam Hussein came running. They struck the other brother. He fell from his horse. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he gets to one brother. He gets to Aoun. He says, my child, what have they done to you? He says, my master, my uncle, when I fell, I heard my brother was falling from the horse. Go to him. Look after him. Don't worry about me. The narration said that Imam al-Hussein, he then goes to the other brother. He goes to Muhammad. He says, my child, what have they done to you? The brother says that I heard my brother falling. Oh, Sayyidi wa Mawlai, go to him. Imam al-Hussein is back and forth between the two brothers. What happens? Their souls depart and they go towards the heavens. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam takes these two brothers. He brings the bodies. He brings them in front of Zainab so that she may cry for her children. Zainab looks at them and she raises her hands and she thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sacrifice. She doesn't cry for her sons. The narrations say, in some narrations, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he put his hands on the chest of each of the sons and he began to cry like a mother cries for the children because he knew Zainab didn't want to cry in front of him. He cried his heart out. But this was the heart of Zainab. Narrations say that Zainab didn't cry for Aoun and Muhammad, that they went from Karbala Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham, and they spent time in Sham, and Zainab never cried for her sons Aun and Muhammad. The narrations say when they were released from Sham, Zainab said, we will not go anywhere, we will stay here, I will do the first majlis of my brother Aba Abdullah. At that point in time, she said, give me a room. They gave her a room. The first majlis of Imam al-Hussein, they say, at that point in time, she said, give me back the heads, give us back those things that you looted from us. They gave back the looted things. They began to give back the heads. The head of Abbas came, the head of Qasim came, the head of Ali al-Akbar came. Mother and loved ones began to take the heads. The 2 heads remained in the corner. There was no one to cry for them. A lady called out, it seems there is no mother for these 2 moons. Zainab heard this. She said, do not say that. These are my sons. But who is there to cry for the son of Fatima al-Zahra? Because Zainab had taken the head of Imam al-Hussein. Ajrukum Allah. Zainab went to Karbala. She went to the grave of Imam Hussein. She didn't cry for Aun and Muhammad. She went back to Medina. She didn't cry. She went to the grave of Rasulullah. She didn't cry on Aun and Muhammad. She went to the grave of Imam Hassan. She didn't cry on Muhammad. She went to her mother's grave. She didn't cry. At that point in time, the narrations say that she had gone to the house. She had not gone to her own house. She stayed in the house of Imam Sajjad. Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, her husband, came and said, oh Sajjad, tell your aunt Zainab to come home. She has not come home since she has come back to Medina. Imam Sajjad says, oh my aunt Zainab, go home. You haven't been home. Zainab gets up. She proceeds towards her home. She sees the walls and the avenues of Banu Hashim's neighborhood. She comes towards her house. She sees the wall. She sees the door. Allah knows what memories were in the heart of Zainab. She opens the door. What does she see? She sees 2 beds. She sees 2 musallas. She hugs them. She says, oh, Muhammad, my sons, my eyes didn't cry for you, but my heart was crying. Who was there to cry for the son of Fatima al-Zahra? Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallallahu alayka ya Fatima al-Zahra, Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alameen. Sallallahu alayka ya Hassan al-Mujtaba. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين معكم حسين يا حسين يا حسين
Same. के अदा सारे के सारे अब कर गए मातर के अदा सारे के सारे अब कर गए मातर के अदा सारे के सारे अब कर गए मातर के अदा सारे के सारे मामू पे फिदा हो गए ज़ैनब के दुलारे अब कर गए मातर के अदा सारे के सारे अब कर गए मातर के अदा सारे के सारे समझाती थी बच्चों को बड़े प्यार से ज़ैनब समझाती थी बच्चों को बड़े प्यार से ज़ैनब بھولے سے نہ جانا کبھی دریا کے کنارے کر کرے ماتر یہ ادا سارے کے سارے کر کرے ماتر یہ ادا سارے کے سارے پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہر آن یہی دھیان پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہر آن یہی دھیان پانی کا تصور نہ ہو بہنوں میں تمہارے کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا دیکھو میں خفا ہوں گی جو ماموں کو پکارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے میرے خیمے سے دیکھوں گی جری کون ہے تم میں خیمے سے دیکھوں گی جری کون ہے تم للکار کے پہلے تو بن ساد تمہارے تب کر کرے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے وعدہ جو کیا ماں سے وفا کر گئے دونوں وعدہ جو کیا ماں سے وفا کر گئے دونوں پیاسے ہی لڑے پیاسے ہی دنیا سے سدھارے گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے صد ہے دشت بلا تیری زمین صد ہے دشت بلا تیری زمین سب چھین لیے زینب مزتر کے سہارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے تب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے پالا تھا جنہیں گود میں وہ جا بسے بن میں پالا تھا جنہیں گود میں وہ جا بسے بن میں اب کون ہے زینب کو جو ماں کہہ کے پکارے اب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے اب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے ماموں پہ فدا ہو گئے زینب کے دلارے اب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے اب کر گئے ماتر ادا سارے کے سارے Hussein, 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 Hussein. جات میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا مجمع کوفیوں کا میرے چلنے کی جا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میرے سر سے بار چنی چادر بھلوے میں نبی زادی پھر بائی گئی در در مل جائے ردا مجھ کو اور میری دیوا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میرے دل کو یہ درد ستاتا ہے غازی کا نیزے سے سب خاک پہ آتا ہے سر میرا کھلا دیکھے غم سے بڑا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد چلوں کیسے لاکھوں ہے تماشائی یاد آتا ہے رہ کے عباس میرا بھائی فریاد کروں تجھ سے اب تیرے سوا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا معلوم ہے آدا کو ماضی کی بہن ہوں میں یہ دست ہے وہ غازی پابند رسن ہوں میں یاد آئی وفا اس کی تب پاس رہا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا معلوم ہے آدا کو غازی کی بہن ہوں میں بے دست ہے وہ غازی پابند رسن ہوں میں یاد آئی وفا اس کی جب پاس رہا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا سجاد میں زینب ہوں میرے سر پہ ردا کوئی نہیں بازار جفا حسین 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 حسین
قسما بالله داحي الأرض خلاق السماوات وبما جاء به جبريل من وحي وآيات أنادي بكرامة إلى يوم القيامة سأذوق الموت بالعز ولا للذل هيهات اگر از خنجر خونریز لب تشنه ببرند سرم را اگر از تیغ شکافند در این عرصه خونین جگرم را اگر از تیر سه شعبه بدهند آب از شیر گل نو ثمرم را اگر از داغ برادر شکند خصم ستمگر کمرم را قتيل العبرات أسير الكربات أو هل تكتب أحزاني في الطف بحبر ودواء أبدا فالحزن لا يكتب إلا بالدموع الجارية اگر از چار طرف خصم زند بر جگرم تیر اگر آید به سر و کتف و تنم ضربت شمشیر اگر از سنگ شود غرق به خون روی منیرم اگر آتش عوض آب دهد خصم شریرم اگر از داغ پسر سوزم و 100 بار بمیرم ظلمونی قتلونی و تناسوا من أنا صارت الآلام في أرض الأسالي وطنا كل ما مر على الكون من الأحزان قد مر هنا بخدایی که مرا خواسته با پیکر سچاک ببیند به تنم زخم 200 نیزه و شمشیر نشیند به ستمگر ندهم دستم و ذلت نپذیرم اگر آرند به جنگم همه اهل زمین را و سما را مظلوم حسین جانم مظلوم حسین جانم حسین جانم منم و عهد الستم نگسستم نشکستم به خدا غیر خدا را نپرستم به خدا من پسر شیر خدا و پسر فاطمه هستم عربی علوی قرشی شجری احدی بدری فاطمی قمری همه دار و ندارم همه 72 یارم به فدای ره جانان منم و سرخی رویم منم و خون گلویم منم و حنجر عطشان منم و داغ جوانان منم و خاک بیابان منم و سم ستوران انا للهادی حبیب وفي الطف غريب وسليب وتريب وعجيب أن أذوق الموت ضامي فمن عني يحامي وشيب ذا خضيب من رگهای بریده منم و قلب دریده منم و طفل صغیرم منم و کودک شیرم منم و دخت اسیرم منم و حی قدیرم او هل يعبد رب الكون فوق الارض مثلي فانا المحراب من جاء به السيف يصلي لما يقتل طفلي وتسبى كل أهلي لما يقطع نحري ولما أقتل ضامن وبجنب ماء نهري منم زخم فراضا منم آية قرآن منم زخم زبانها منم تیغ سنانها همه آیید و ببینید مقام و شرف و عزت ما را مظلوم حسین جانم مظلوم حسین جانم مظلوم حسین جانم وهنا الكل يرى ما بحالي قد جرى أو يرضى المصطفى خير الورى أن يمسوا من حسين اظفرا بخدا وبرسول بعلي بن أبي طالب وزهراء بتول وشقيق المجتبى فحل الفحول ذا أخي كيف به إن رأى الخيل على صدر تجول بهفتاد ديارا بحبيبا بزهيرا بطر ما حب جونوبها بباك سرشتم بجلال وشرفه آبس وعباس بعثمان وبجعفر بشهيدان عقيل وبخلوص دل عبد الله قاسم بعلي أكبر داغش بعلي أصغر خونش يلطم البدر على الصدر حزينا باليدين ودموع منه تجري كاللجين وينادي بحدادي وهو مكسور الفؤاد يا عمادي يا مرادي يا حبيبي يا حسين
مظلوم حسين جانا
مظلوم حسين جانا
مظلوم حسين جانا
بقول ياس مدينة برقية بسكينة بدل سوخت يا زينب كبرى ودو فرزند شهيدش بلبتش يا أطفال صغيرة بتني خست يا سجاد عزيزم من از این قوم ستمگر نگریزم نکنم بیعت با خصم ستمگر بستیزم سر من بر سر نیراه خدا پوید با دوست سخن گوید گردد هدف سنگ و خورد چوب نبینم به خدا غیر خدا را
مظلوم حسین جانا
مظلوم حسین جانا
مظلوم حسین جانا
بنبي عربي ورسول مدني وأخيه أسد الله المسمى بعلي وبزهراء بتول وبأم ولدتها وبسبطيه وشبليه هما نجل زكي وبسجاد وبالباقر والصادق حقا وبموسى وعلي وتقي ونقي وبذي العسكر والحجة القائم بالحق الذي يضرب بالسيف لحكم أزلي بمحمد ومحمد بعلي وعلي
مظلوم حسین جانا
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًّا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًّا حجة الله. حي إن الله وملائكته حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. إن الله وملائكته حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأمل حي على خير الأمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم
سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا الله يا رحمن يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده
سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بقول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية
الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا اله الا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والاكرام واتوب اليه. استغفر الله الذي لا اله الا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والاكرام واتوب اليه. استغفر الله الذي لا اله الا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
اللهم صل على أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأمل حي على خير الأمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته نقوم ونعود. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته يقوم وتعود. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي وبحمده.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية في الدنيا.
الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بما وضعت فيه، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه الهدى. فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري أفي سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من. قد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسدبه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا، ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي، وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
Listen, brothers, as we complete our prayers tonight, let us remember those people who are in difficult situations around the world, those who are in hospitals and home recovering, people who are languishing unjustly in prisons, stuck in conflict zones, displaced, or in refugee camps, those who are enduring economic hardship. And let us remember all those brothers and sisters who are in these flood-affected areas or in Asia. May Allah bring them relief. Let us all together pray. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Sisters, brothers, Surah Al-Fatiha is requested by the sponsor of the program tonight, Sister Rubina Qureshi, for her grandparents and all departed souls of family members. And also for all Mahumins of supporters of Muharram programs in Iman, and for all Mahumins and our respected friends and families. Fatiha. Brothers and sisters, just another quick announcement. Brother Hayatullah asked me to remind everybody that our program here every night is at 7:30 sharp till 9:30. We finish about now, and then on the day of on the night of Ashura, it'll be the same program, 7:30 to 9:30. But on Friday and Saturday, after the Salaat al-Maghribain, we'll have a Q&A interactive session with our speaker. Also on Ashura, on the day of Ashura, which is Monday, our program will start at 11 in the morning with the Amal of Ashura, followed by Salaat al-Zuhrayn at 1:30, followed by the Maqtal at 2 p.m., followed by the Ladies Majlis at 5 p.m., followed by the Shami Gariba program at 8:45. And then our last program for this series will be on Tuesday at 7:30 again. Yes, we conclude Tawajjuh Ziyarat.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك،
عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت ولي الليل ولا جعله الله آخر اللحد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامي وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك، رحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة لابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا تمتعه فيها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد. This concludes our program for this evening. Thank you all for coming, brothers and sisters. Please be careful when you leave. Refrain from hugging and shaking for your safety, for the safety of everybody else. Help yourself with tabarruk. See you inshallah tomorrow at 7:30. Please try to be on time. Very few people at 7:30. Tomorrow inshallah, let's increase our numbers by 50%, okay?
The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Betrayal by the Kufans set this moon on its course, calling out for their guide. Treachery with no remorse, Muslim and his sons. What a tragedy! Oh, what calamity! The moon bleeds to foresee. The moon bleeds to foresee. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. On the 9th it heard the prayers of those pure souls, fought the rising sun for. Perhaps this could be its role. Akbar's azan so clear, this moon filled with fear. How will it possibly arise and see the state of those dear, and see the state of those dear. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. It saw the 6-month infant, no water but an arrow. That night it shone its light on Rabab, filled with such sorrow. To see my asghar I crave, I hear nothing but his cries. Oh son, please do not arise. And with this mother sympathize, and with this mother sympathize. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Witnessed it the trampling on Sham-e Ghariba, saw that night the terror, bodies scattered afar, tents looted and on fire, earrings snatched from Ruqayyah. This moon also in such pains, this household bound in chains, this household bound in chains. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. From this month my baby had to wander veilless. Zahra's grave is restless for her daughter princess, the cloak of purity. For this mother so holy, the beloved of Fatima, paraded in the bazaar, paraded in the bazaar. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala.